Yeah, bards are pretty annoying. They have all those weird spells that mess with your mind and all those crazy illusions. But what if we made them even more annoying by teaching them how to trip people? Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher, aka Thraben, you here for another Pathfinder Second Edition video, and welcome to the most annoying bard in the world. Oh, sorry, I checked the title is actually called the Athletics Bard. Whoops. We'll go with that. First of all, thank you all for your continued support. I will be releasing videos every Friday in June, and at the end of June, I'm going to take a look at all my analytics and see where we stand to see whether or not I'm going to keep kind of pushing hard on this channel. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got kind of a number in mind that I am hoping to hit, and we are not there yet. And if you are in the position to financially support me, you could become a YouTube member for a few dollars every month and gain early access to my videos, like Christian, Dungeon Kaiser, and Casimir have. And if you want to directly come up with an idea for a video for this channel, you can donate to me directly, reach out via email to do this. The idea of a bard that uses their first action every turn to do an athletics maneuver actually comes to us from Austin. Austin, thank you very much for supporting my content, and let's get into it. As far as today goes, we're going to talk about a normal Warrior Muse Bard first. That is, the bard that normally walks up to people and goes bonk. We're going to do a little side note to talk about lingering composition and the multifarious muse feat that can let you gain access to more of the muses, more subclasses essentially. We are going to talk about why you might want to make an athletics bard as opposed to other types of bards. And then we're going to, kind of tying in with that, talk about spell selection for an athletics bard in particular, as you're not going to be a traditional bard. As we go through today's video, this is not going to be a right answer day. In my animist, melee animist guide that I wrote, I was very particular, you're going to take X, Y, and Z feat, you're going to stack this circumstance bonus with this status bonus with this item bonus. And today is going to be much more of me showing you all of the branching tendrils that go off in different directions. I'm going to be inspiring you to make some pretty neat bard characters, but I'm not handing you an answer sheet at the end of the day so much as I'm giving you the things that you're going to need to be thinking about if you want to build one of these. And so as our starting point here, we should probably discuss what makes the Warrior Muse Bard good and unique in the first place. And its first level feat, Martial Performance, is a big part of it. So, when you strike and you get a hit, you get to sustain a Courageous Anthem, a Rallying Anthem, or a Song of Strength. And these are three different melee-related composition cantrips. And in case you're not super familiar with bards, composition cantrips are essentially one-action cantrips that are going to impact not just you, but also your allies in a certain range, usually either a 30 or 60-foot emanation. So Courageous Anthem offers you a status bonus to hit, to damage, and against saves for fear. Rallying Anthem gives you a bonus to AC, as well as a little bit of resistance, and Song of Strength can directly increase your athletics, which might be something relevant to our interests today. But unfortunately for our interests today, this says when you strike, not when you do a really sexy athletics maneuver. So we might have to have some other reasons to be doing what we're doing today. More on that in a little bit. And when I did some initial research for this video, I found some threads on Reddit talking about the Warrior Muse, and everyone was like, just be a fighter and take the Bard archetype, which I think is absolutely terrible advice. If you are playing a Warrior Muse Bard, you are not doing so to strike. I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what this class is trying to do. If you are playing a Warrior Muse Bard, you are a full spellcaster that is going to have the capability of making decent strikes. You are not trying to be a fighter that will sometimes cast spells. You are not just trying to be a fighter that has stolen a composition cantrip to get, a cool little supportive aura. That's not what you're actually trying to accomplish. You are trying to have the flexibility, the power, the ability to take down enemies through things other than damage, through your cool illusions and mental effects and buffs and debuffs. That is why you are playing a warrior bard. So being a caster is still your priority, but you want to be a caster that can strike, or perhaps, in our case, a caster who will often do athletics actions instead. So we should view this as closer to a war priest cleric than a fighter. A war priest cleric is a full caster with a gajillion D spell slots, and that is awesome. But they also can go bonk or get in there with their sword and shield or their bastard sword, whatever it is that you're going to be doing. And another big disadvantage of taking a fighter and then putting a bard archetype on it is that you are going to get the bard feats more slowly than the bard itself would be getting them. So you're going to go and take a dedication at level 2 if you're a fighter trying to poach bard stuff. And then at level 4, you get your first bard feat, which can be a first or second level bard feat. Whereas the level 4 bard, has a 4th level bard feat and is progressing faster in their own subtract than you are. And the Warrior Muse does have some pretty interesting things that you might want to get on level. And I'm going to highlight a bunch of them, even if we wouldn't necessarily use these today, like use all of them today at the same time in the same build, because it shows off the variety of what the Warrior Muse is capable of. So, Courageous Advance, for example. If your next action is to cast Courageous Anthem, one ally of your choice, who is going to be affected by the spell, can immediately use their reaction to stride. Hey, that's really cool. You get your song going, you reposition your ally, and you get them ready to go in martial combat. That's great. Or, instead, if your next action is to cast the Rallying Anthem composition cantrip, you can raise your shield, and one ally of your choice, who would be impacted by this, can immediately use their reaction to raise a shield as well. Or with Courageous Assault, if you're going to cast Courageous Anthem a little later on when you're level 10, one ally of your choice who can gain a status bonus from the spell can immediately use their reaction to make a melee strike. And getting reactions without any map penalty is fantastic. And if you can just do that every turn, every other turn, depending on how exactly your action economy is going, you can greatly increase the damage output of your party by ensuring that one of your party members has a reaction. And if they maybe aren't going to be triggering their attack of opportunity, their reactive strike for some reason, that can be a lot of damage output. And even later on, the Warrior Muse, the Bard, can get the ability to just cast their composition cantrips for free. Now, admittedly, that's when you critically hit a foe with a weapon, which isn't going to happen all the times, but sometimes you can get some really cool free action economy out of your class. And as you are putting together your Warrior Muse Bard build, I think the biggest question that you have to ask is which composition cantrip are you going to be doing? Or what I think is going to be more likely, which composition cantrips, plural, do you want to have in your toolkit? I don't think playing a Warrior Muse Bard means that you are always going to use the same one all the time. And I think it is going to be very, very party dependent. As we saw in those couple of examples already, depending on how many of your party members use a shield, or how many of your party members have reactive strike, or how many of your party members would really, really benefit from a free move action, like, you are going to have things that drastically change the evaluation of your character, and it might even change from battle to battle. So I don't think I can say, in a vacuum, in a guide that I am making, this is the composition cantrip that is right for this character. And again, I don't think this is going to be like my Melee Animist guide, where I give you exactly what it is that you are going to be doing. I think I am giving you the tools you need to see what you should be thinking about today. As a note here, I hate Dirge of Doom. I do not like that composition cantrip. I made a video about that. People did not like that video. They do not like it when you go against conventional knowledge in this community. That being said, if you are going to specifically be using a combination of athletics maneuvers and casting spells, that is two different reasons why you might like Dirge of Doom. And Dirge of Doom's biggest limiting factor is its 30-foot range, as opposed to the 60 feet of some of the other composition cantrips. And so a lot of the downsides of Dirge of Doom are going to be mitigated by how your character specifically is going to be playing versus how a more conservative bard that wants to be attacking from a distance would be playing their character. But the downside of Dirge of Doom here is going to be that it doesn't actually synergize with any of your Warrior Muse specific features. So if you are trying to take advantage of the cool stuff that looks like this, Dirge of Doom does not play along with that stuff. With all that being said, I think someone who is playing a Warrior Muse in this capacity is probably going to end up with 2 or 3 different composition cantrips that they might fire off depending on the circumstances, and you might even change which one you are using within a single battle more than a traditional just full-on bard spellcaster might. Before we go any further into the Warrior Muse specifically, I want to highlight one generically powerful bard feat that is probably going to be relevant to the way that you will build this character, and that is Multifarious Muse. This is a feat that allows you to pick up a second muse, essentially, a second subclass. So you choose a new type of muse, you are going to get a first level feat that requires that muse, and your muse is now considered of that muse type in addition. So you can keep taking feats that require that muse. And this is most commonly used by non-maestro bards to pick up the Lingering Composition cantrip focus spell. So, if your next action is going to be to cast a composition cantrip with a duration of 1 round, you attempt a performance check, usually a standard level DC. And if you succeed, your composition lasts for 3 rounds instead of the 1 round it normally does. And on a critical success, it is going to last 4 rounds instead. So, if your bard normally was going to do 2 actions to cast a spell and 1 action to cast a composition cantrip and just do that every single turn, all fight, discounting moving and such, that would be a fine way to play things out. But if instead, just on your first turn, you use a focus point, you cast Lingering Composition, you get your you get your composition cantrip going, and now it lasts for 3 rounds, that opens up some single action activities on other rounds. As a heads up, Lingering Composition is not always going to succeed. And let's take a look at first level, for example. At first level, you're a bard, you probably don't have any sweet gear yet or anything. You've got 4 charisma probably, meaning you've got a +7 to performance. Your level 1 standard DC is 15, meaning on a 7 or lower, you are going to fail your check. That is 35% of the time, you are not actually going to do the thing that you want to do. Now, despite this, Lingering Composition is still really, really good. And over time, the failure rate of this is going to go down dramatically as you get bonuses to your performance. And I'll just real world example this. I played a bard recently up to level 8. So I pulled up my character sheet. My bard regularly has a +21 to performance. For charisma, I am a master in performance. I have an item bonus. I have usually a +2 circumstance bonus via virtuistic performer. Sometimes I will also have a bonus from something like musical accompaniment as well. So sometimes it'll even be 22. The level 8 standard level DC is 24, meaning that on a 1 or a 2, I fail that check, versus the 35% of failure we had at level 1. And if I do have a chance to cast musical accompaniment beforehand, because it makes sense, I know that I'm walking into something, I can add another +1 bonus on top of that, meaning that I only fail that on a nat 1. So as your bard levels up, Lingering Composition is going to become increasingly more reliable, and you will probably crit on an increasing range of those as well. Lingering Composition is not something that you have to have on every bard. It is very, very powerful. A normal Warrior Muse might not want this. They might intend to strike regularly, and they can just sustain their composition cantrips when they hit on a strike. But for our character specifically, if we want to use our 2 actions most of the time, our 3 actions to usually 1, do an athletics maneuver, and then 2, cast a spell on top of that, that means that lingering composition is going to fit much, much, much better into our action economy than just trying to fit strikes in there too, especially when map gets involved, because remember, your various athletics maneuvers have the attack trait, meaning that they do accumulate map. And I guess on that note, now we should go into like, well, why would we want to be a spellcaster that is doing athletics actions? This does sound a little funny. So, to Austin and everyone else out there who wants to be building an athletics bard, the question that I'm going to pose to you here is, well, why is tripping or grappling even good on this character? And I think you need to answer that fundamentally before you proceed any further with the actual build itself. Now, the trip and grapple actions are great, and things like shove and disarm and such will have their place too. But specifically, why are you doing that with this character? Are you doing this so that when the enemy stands, it is going to trigger your reactive strike? Are you doing this to set up your allies who will trigger their reactive strike? Are you doing this to keep someone in an area of effect spell? Your kineticist creates this giant fiery column and now the earth is burning around you, and you're just like, you stay here, as you grab the enemy. Are you tripping them and keeping them in that area instead? If you're doing something like this, you might actually be increasing the damage output of your party by repeatedly making someone make a saving throw against a sustained effect. Or are you just being really annoying to take the pressure off of someone else? Let's say that you have a wizard who doesn't even have maxed out AC in your party. If you run up and grab onto the enemy and you say, "You're staying here, pal, you're not getting to the wizard," and you, as a slightly tankier character, take those hits instead, you might be keeping the party from needing to heal someone and bring someone up. And so you sort of draw the aggro by doing all of these really annoying athletics maneuvers that are going to waste actions from the enemy. And as you start thinking about your build, especially if you are in a free archetype game, you might want to think, what am I going to grab from other classes that will supplement this playstyle that I'm trying to make? The fighter archetype offers a reactive strike earlier than most other archetypes. You can get it at level 4, which is pretty darn good. And you can get reactive strike from other classes around level 6 usually. Note that the Warrior Muse Bard does have, I believe, an 8th level feat that allows them to take a reactive strike. But if you are playing in a lower level campaign, that is just too late for what you want to be doing in all likelihood. The champion archetype similarly could work pretty well for you. You're probably going to be maxing out your strength and your charisma as much as possible, which leans into the champion archetype perfectly. And you could get a really annoying reaction that maybe does something like dazzle your opponents or allows you to make a reactive strike to protect your allies, maybe giving you better access to armor. I believe bards start out trained only in light armor, and medium armor might end up being better for you if you are going to be strength focused, like I think a lot of these bards probably would end up being since you're trying to do athletics maneuvers. And both of these archetypes, fighter and champion, have a resiliency feat, which for each feat that you take from that archetype, you gain 3 HP. And this can allow you to effectively have more HP than an 8 HP class would normally have. And if you add some things like toughness beyond that, maybe shield block beyond that, you can actually end up creating a bard who is much tankier than the average bard. An alternative thing that you could look at is the ever popular wrestler archetype, which has the combat grab feat, which can allow you to strike, and then if you have a free hand left afterwards, you can then grab as a single action. And that is really, really good action compression. These are in my opinion, probably the three archetypes that you would want to be looking at as this character. There are other melee-oriented archetypes that you could want, like Martial or Sentinel, but these would probably be the direction that I personally would be going. And on that note, this is probably the stage of character creation where you want to be thinking about the hands of your bard. On a lot of the spellcasters that I play, I have two different spellcasting related things in my hand. So for a bard, maybe you have a coda in your hand, which is essentially a staff but with bard flavor and musically themed. And maybe you have a wand in the other hand. But that's probably not how your warrior bard is going to play out. You probably want a free hand for athletics maneuvers or otherwise a weapon that has some really nice traits on it. If you want to focus on some of the Warrior Muse features that allow you to raise shields, then a shield needs to be in your hand. Maybe that means you leave the other hand open as totally free. Maybe that means you are using a shield augmentation to add the trip trait to your shield. You've got some things to think about here. In sort of thumbing through some weapons, I found this one. I don't know how to pronounce the name of this one. I'm going to be real with you, but it is a flail that has the grapple, trip, and disarm traits, which is a lot. D6 damage die plus the flail critical weapon specialization is pretty darn good. It knocks someone prone, so if you gain access to that, like huge thumbs up. Note that as an occult caster, you do have access to some pretty cool items and wands. I know my bard absolutely loved the Wand of Shardstorm, which has a force barrage that can keep firing turn after turn. It's really cool. So by trying to do this bard that is doing athletics maneuvers, you could be giving up something like that. But you would be getting benefits in other areas, so it's not like it's entirely a loss. And I want to reflect on the beginning of the video. So we said that in playing a Warrior Muse Bard, we are still a full spellcaster. And we want to take advantage of the fact that we are a full spellcaster. But we are probably not selecting our spells in the same way that a traditional full caster bard is going to be playing. And by full caster in this exact instance, I mean someone who is intending on just casting spells all the time as their primary way of doing stuff, like from a distance. That's not what we're doing here. And because we're not going to be playing from, say, a range of 30 to 60 feet away from the enemy at all times, and instead we are going to be 5 feet away from the enemy, maybe 10 feet away if we have a reach weapon, we should be selecting our spells keeping that in mind. And maybe we don't want any 3-action spells, for example, because we don't want to use 3 actions on a spell, because that means we don't get to do an athletics maneuver on that turn. And I think in trying to play a Warrior Muse Bard this way, we want to be the double annoyer. That is, we would love to do a successful athletics action to give our opponent some status effect, be that prone or grabbed, and then we would like to do something else annoying with a spell slot on top of that. And I'm going to give you an example of 3 spells. I'm not going to just dive through the entire occult list and give you, like, hey, these are the exact spells that you should be looking at, but I want to show you the sort of things that you should be looking for. And we'll start with a first level spell, Agitate. This is one that I never ever used on my long range bard. 30 foot, will save, targets 1 creature. The duration could be 1 to 4 rounds, depending on degree of success here. So, during the duration, the target must stride, fly, or swim at least once each turn, or take 2d8 mental damage at the end of its turn. This is, on the surface, not a very exciting spell. It is maybe going to do 0 damage. But what if we change the circumstances? What if that target is now prone and on the ground? You knocked it over. Stand is not on the list of acceptable actions. So, you wasted an action by tripping it. It now stands up, and it needs to decide whether it is going to do offensive things or run away as to avoid the mental damage. And this is something that will often, I would say, last for 2 rounds. Will is often the lowest save for enemies. Not always, but often, especially at lower levels. And if you end up doing 4d8 mental damage to a low level target, that thing is probably dead. And you could kill it by just messing with its action economy after you have casted an agitate. And this is probably something that I wouldn't really think about playing a normal bard, because I would rather just do the damage up front. But the damage that I might do would probably be less than what this agitate is capable of doing over time. And the circumstances have totally changed by throwing in these athletics actions. So what you should be trying to do is find spells like this that get better if the target does not, or maybe cannot, move. And now I'm going to use a popular spell, but kind of reframe it. The slow spell is really, really good. For some reason, it doesn't have the incapacitation trait, meaning that if your big bad boss just happens to roll bad and fail that save, they are slowed 1 for 1 whole minute. Now I want you to imagine that your boss is slowed 1 by your bard, and then your bard keeps kicking it in the shins and knocking it over. Your enemy is down 1 action normally, and then has to use an action to stand up afterwards. So that bard, by itself, theoretically takes out 2/3 of an enemy's action economy. That is fantastic. So slow is just generically incredibly powerful and good. And even on a success, like, the target still loses an action, which is totally a fine exchange. If you use 2 player actions to deny 1 action of a boss, like, that is still great. And if you are then trying to take away actions further beyond that, you're probably having a good time on the player side. But I think one of the best things that you can probably do if you are just trying to keep an enemy locked in place is keep them in an area of effect spell. Now that could be an emanation around you, that could be a burst that you put next to yourself, kind of whatever. But if you can keep an enemy in an emanation or a burst that is going to keep hurting them every turn, either when you sustain that spell or at the start of their turn or whatever, you are going to make that spell more effective. Now, as a note here, your action economy might get a little weird if you are using an action to take an athletics action, using an action to sustain a spell. You have a 3rd singular action in there that you have to do something with. This might be where you do something like cast your composition cantrip, or you use some lower level spell slots to just, like, pew, fire off a 1 action force barrage or something like that. You'll kind of want to think about how your action economy is going to flow in practice when you do this sort of stuff. Yeah, I just thought of this now, but I suppose hypothetically, you could get into some really weird situation where you go 2 action crowd control spell, next turn sustain, 2 action crowd control spell, and then you, like, sustain, grapple from there. That's probably a little bit harder to set up, and the enemy might, like, escape in the middle of that, but you might be able to get even more creative with your turns. Rouse Skeletons is perhaps not an overly exciting spell on its own. As a 3rd rank spell, this is only dealing 2d6 slashing damage. So it is when you sustain this over the course of multiple turns, or you hit multiple enemies with it, that the damage on this starts to become respectable and even good. But another thing to keep in mind here is that you are an occult caster, so it's not like you are flinging lightning bolts and fireballs anyway. But your allies might be. One of the things that you can do by having training and then later expertise and mastery and legendary status in athletics is reposition enemies. You can just shove those enemies back into the area of effect spells, the emanations, the bursts of your friends. And if you are shoving enemies back into an area, meaning that they are going to take damage from that spell again, or have to make a new saving throw or take on a status effect, that can be really, really strong. And when you build characters, if you, to some small extent, think about the party that you are going to be with and think about the tools that are going to be in your allies' toolkits, you can actually build better characters. You can have these multi-character combos that end up being really, really strong. All right, I'm going to cast this big, primal area control spell. You just keep them in this, and we'll take care of the rest. That healer is going to keep you propped up. You keep wasting the enemy actions, and we will take down someone tactically rather than just have 4 different people try to approach the fight purely on a damage axis. And on the team building note, the more of your team members that can benefit from your athletics actions, the stronger it will be to play this type of bard. The bard is generically one of the better support characters in Pathfinder Second Edition. The composition cantrips have a pretty large range. They impact a lot of people with lingering composition or another way to sustain them. They can last for a long time. But in building your character this way, there's definitely going to be some times where you don't have a composition cantrip active because you had other things that you wanted to be doing. And just make sure that those things are good enough to make up for the fact that you don't have a composition cantrip going all the time. The benefit of this character is you are going to have really good tools in your toolkit. You just need to make sure you're using the hammer when you need to use the hammer and not the screwdriver. Rounding out this section, I just want to briefly talk about some gear. I think if you are at a money tight table, it might be a little tough to play this character. I think you are going to need item bonuses for both performance and athletics to be good. You are also going to need probably various striking and potency runes for your weapon, assuming that you have one. If you are playing a shield, you probably want to be able to upgrade that to, a sturdy shield and be able to reinforce that as time goes on. And then maybe you want a coda, and even if you're not using it in your hands in battle, maybe you have some staves or wands that you are going to use for utility outside of battle. And I imagine that this character could end up spending a lot of money. Luckily, you've got that really high performance skill. Use some downtime to earn some income and help yourself out with that a little bit. And maybe ask your DM to be a little generous because the earn income table is not super generous, especially if you're playing on sort of a tight deadline campaign. Note that a temporary solution to your athletics modifier might actually be mutagens. So you can take various degrees of the deadweight mutagen to gain a bonus to your athletics ability for a little while. So if you've got a pal who is an alchemist and they can just make all sorts of stuff every day, you might ask them for the hookup for some drugs to make it so that your performance is a little higher in combat. So let's wrap this up by one last time asking, why are we playing an athletics bard? Why are we playing a Warrior Muse Bard? And I think the answer to that is flexibility. You could strike. You could grapple, trip, shove. You could cast spells. You can still do the whole composition cantrip buffs, maybe even with lingering composition. Maybe you have used your archetype to pick up a consistent reaction, and so you are using all 4 of the actions that are available to you every turn, not just the 3 actions that the system normally has you using. And at the end of the day, you are a full spellcaster with all of those slots available to you, but you have picked up some of the options of a melee character. Are you going to have the accuracy of a fighter? No. Are you going to have the tankiness of a barbarian? No. But you're going to do a pretty respectable impression of a martial character while having full spellcasting options. And I think that's pretty solid. So with that, folks, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. If you made it to this point in the video and you're not subscribed yet, just saying, it would help a lot. Anyway, have that great rest of the day. See ya!